Hey, it's Dr. Noseworthy, and we're at Unique Wellness Lifestyle Series number 2. We're going to be talking about part 1 of our exercise discussion. And my primary goal today is just to ask the simple question, are you ready? It's an imperative part of any wellness program to be physically active. And I mean physically active in a very specific sense. We'll talk more details on this later. But I don't mean just walking your dog or puttering your garden. I'm talking about having a physical routine where you are challenging your fitness capacity and improving that. Just like changing your diet, changing your stressors can be a tool that you can use to manipulate your physiology. Exercise is the same way. We'll talk about general guidelines and principles, and in our second installment in part 2, we'll be talking more specifics. My intent with this lesson today is to go over the big picture stuff. Now, you may be an ex-athlete, you may be currently exercising. We will deal with where you are and what the next step is for you in our individual consultations. But I want to paint the picture for you because the world of exercise science has changed significantly in the last 10 years. And if you're exercising, if you haven't been exercising, or if you are, and you're kind of basing it on routines and concepts and principles that kind of characterized maybe the 1980s, the 1990s, and the early 2000s, there are probably some things that we need to update and change. So we're going to be talking about Are You Ready? We're going to define fitness and functional fitness, and we're going to talk some of these general principles. So let's look at the core 4 here. Again, the core 4 concept is throughout the entire Unique Wellness lecture series. We're going to start by defining what is fitness. We want to make sure that we're clear on what we're after. Then we'll go into concepts and principles. We'll talk about this very important thing called the metabolic tipping point. This is absolutely critical if you're going to be able to successfully use exercise as a tool. And then we're going to talk about developing the habit of exercise. So we'll start with core number 1. What is fitness? And if I say, hey, I met this guy the other day, this lady, and he or she was really fit, that probably evokes some kind of imagery to you because we all probably have a slightly different impression or understanding of what fitness is. And so for some people, fitness might be the guy who can run an ultra marathon. Or for someone else, fitness might be the strongest guy in the world. And in reality, neither one of these people are fit. What you're looking at here is you're looking at two different extremes in only one variable of a broader concept of fitness. We'll define the different variables that make up fitness in just a moment. But for example, in order for the athlete on the left to be the best endurance athlete he can be, he has to not train like a world-class powerlifter. Because to be able to run for a very long time, you can't weigh 400 pounds. But on the other hand, to be the strongest person in the world, you have to be exceedingly overweight because the increased body girth and actually having a gut in front of your stomach gives you, gut in front of your stomach, having a gut that protrudes out in front of you gives you a mechanical leverage to lift very, very heavy weights. And this is why the strongest people in the world all have the same body type and why ultra endurance athletes all have the same body type, because the training results in a specific expression of how their body develops. But in order to accomplish an extreme in one discipline, you have to forsake all others. So for example, I doubt that the person on the left can do maybe more than a handful of push-ups. Certainly couldn't squat a couple of 100 pounds, but the guy on the right who is squatting probably 600 or 700 pounds in that picture there probably can't walk up the stairs or maybe walk to the parking lot without getting winded, because to get strong, he has had to forsake development of his cardiorespiratory system. So when we look at this concept of fitness, we want to avoid extremes. And in fact, in a very early kind of a preview of what fitness is, we want just a little bit of everything. So let's move on to this and just define really what fitness is. Fitness is really a balance of 10 different elements. And we're referencing CrossFit.com as an organization here, and they even took this definition of fitness from other groups. But generally now, fitness is considered to be a moderate capacity in each of these different elements. So to be truly fit, you have to have a certain amount of strength, a certain amount of power, speed, stamina, and endurance. You also have to have good balance and coordination. You may have to display agility, and you have to have physically accurate movements and have a certain amount of flexibility. And so this is really what true fitness is. It's not the extremes, but it's a moderate capacity within each of these different, we'll call them domains or different characteristics that we might consider to be fitness. So to go just one step further, we want to define fitness for our purposes as increased work capacity. And that's really what the word fit means. Are you fit to do a certain job? And really what we're talking about is what I call the sport of life. Are you fit for the sport of life? So your fitness increases, you can do more life. If your fitness decreases, your participation in that necessarily must suffer. So fitness is increased work capacity, but we have to get a little more detail with this. And it really is increased work capacity across a variety of time domains and across a variety of activities. And so to explain that, basically we need to have a moderate capacity to do activities that are hard and fast, but only for a short duration, like sprinting to the car in a rainstorm or sprinting to snatch a child out of harm's way. But we also need to have fitness across long durations of time, meaning that we might want to go on a hike with our family that's going to last 2 or 3 hours. And we also have to be fit or have a work capacity that is applicable to different kinds of activities, like lifting and pushing things, heavy things, light things, or doing things for long, slow duration events. So this concept of fitness is having multiple variables, and your fitness really is a blend of how well you perform in each one of those things. And defining fitness as increased work capacity across a variety of time domains and activities is the most current scientific understanding of what fitness truly is. Now, you may have heard this term before, functional fitness, and there are a lot of organizations and trainers saying that they are functional fitness personal trainers or whatever the case might be. Now, functional fitness is probably a misused term. It means different things to different people, but really the definition of functional fitness means that a functional fitness program mimics natural or organic movements that are used in daily life. So, for example, your body is designed to squat down, to pick things up, to bend and lift things, to reach overhead, to push away from your body, to pull towards your body. And while you can have an exercise program where you do one thing and you do that one thing over and over and over again, that necessarily doesn't carry over into the broader applications, of the sport of life, which requires your ability to do multiple of these things. So functional fitness, as just an extended definition of what true fitness is, means that it has broad carryover and broad applicability to how you live your daily life and the physical demands that are associated with that. Now, if we understand fitness to be this broad concept with multiple elements, and to understand that fitness is a moderate capacity within each one of these things and not specializing in an extreme to be like an ultra endurance athlete or a super strongman, you are ultimately as fit as your weakest link. So you may be doing very well with strength and power, but if you're not agile, have poor balance, poor stamina and endurance, then you're not fit as someone who is just as strong as you are, but is better balanced and has more endurance and stamina. Now, we don't want to get into this game of comparing ourselves to other people, right? That's ultimately a losing battle because you will always find someone who is fitter than you are. They're stronger, they have better endurance, they're faster, they may have a better physique. We don't want to play that game. We want to compare ourselves to ourselves, and we want to set a goal that tomorrow, next month, next year, we will be more fit than what our starting point is. So I want you to make this a very personal concept and forget about comparisons to your trainer, to your friends, to your sister, mother, brother, or your neighbor, and just look at you and look at where you are and say, how do I take the next step? And how do I do it in conformity to this understanding of functional fitness with a true understanding of developing a moderate capacity among many different elements. So going further now into the second core 2, talking about constants of principles, we've touched on this already. I want you to excel at the sport of life. I have no interest in turning you into an elite athlete unless that's what your desire is. In fact, we have worked with some elite athletes in the past, and yes, believe it or not, elite athletes have bad diets. Elite athletes have metabolic issues that sometimes affect their performance in significant ways. But for the average person and for most of the clients that we work with, we're just people. We have jobs, we have families, maybe we enjoy sports, maybe we don't. That's not the point. The point is that life demands something from you in terms of physical output, and you need to be prepared for that. And you need to have a little bit left over that if there's an emergency, you can meet the demand of that emergency without saying, I've kind of depleted my resources and I can't help you. So I want you to excel at the sport of life, which has very specific demands. And also in terms of general concepts here, oftentimes I get asked, well, what's the best exercise? And here's my bottom line. Any exercise is better than none. So I'm not going to complain if right now all you're doing is a simple walking program, especially if that's what you are metabolically, that's all you're metabolically capable of doing for right now. Now, would I expect you to get better? Absolutely, and we'll help walk you through that process. But any exercise is better than none, but very clearly based on experience and observation, and certainly very well published in the medical literature, is the fact that some exercise methodologies are far superior to others when we start looking at exercise as a tool to manipulate wellness or to manipulate your physiology. Now, personally, I love to exercise. I enjoy the process. I would exercise just for the sake of exercise, regardless of whether it helped me control my body composition or keep me strong and flexible or control my blood sugar or it helped elevate my mood. And these are things that we expect from a well-constructed exercise program. But again, any exercise is better than none. And this is not about other people. This is about you and where you are and what you can and can't do and what you can and can't recover from. And let's build upon that. And let's progress and get you more fit than you were before. And along those lines, when we start talking about getting returns from our exercise program, once again, the medical research is unanimous over the last decade or two that the one key or the one variable that unlocks all of the potential for us to get better with exercise, that one variable is the word intensity. Now, again, just kind of like fitness kind of evokes a mental image that you constructed somewhere along the way. If I say, I want you to exercise intensely, you may have a memory or a recollection of maybe what you used to be able to do in the past, or maybe someone that you know, someone at your gym, if you go there, someone who you think is an intense athlete or works out intensely. But again, we're not going to worry about other people because intensity is intensely personal. When I use the word intensity and I say I want you to work out intensely, it basically means we have to look at what your capacity is right now and push just a little bit past that. Right? So this is about you and your current capacity. So I don't want you to be afraid of the word intensity. I'm not ever going to ask you to do something that is ridiculously beyond what you're currently capable of, but I will ask you to push just a little bit, particularly as we see going through the program, as your body starts to balance, your metabolic systems are working better, your energy systems are working, your sleep is working, your recovery capacity is working, maybe pain and inflammation are coming down. We should be able to push just a little bit harder. There will become a threshold where those obstacles aren't obstacles anymore, and you'll breach a barrier and your fitness level will improve and you'll be capable of doing more. So intensity is the key, and intensity is intensely personal, and it's all about you. Now, the hardest part about going to the gym is going to the gym. Or to say it another way, the hardest part about getting started is getting started. And so we're going to have to talk in just a moment about developing the habit. And again, depending on where you are in your progress right now, you may already be going to the gym. Great. If you've already got that habit established, we may need to talk about tweaking what you're doing in the time that you're dedicating to fitness. Now, maybe you don't like to work out in the gym. Maybe you like to work out at home. Great. There's all kinds of options available to us, and we'll work with you to discover what's going to work, because ultimately we can give you the best crafted fitness program in the world, but if you don't enjoy it and you don't create the habit of carving out time every day, not every day, but every week to do that, then ultimately your fitness program is going to fail. And we want success rather than failure. But before we get into the next thing, I want to define something called the metabolic tipping point. We touched on this just a moment ago when I said that intensity is the key variable, and you have to work up to the point where you can recover and maybe push just a little bit past that. Your ability to respond to any given level of exercise, particularly intense exercise, is probably compromised at this point. It would be a general rule that most of our clients are dealing with metabolic abnormalities that tend to promote inflammation. They tend to promote free radical production, which can increase tissue damage. A lot of times they're dealing with lack of sleep. They're dealing with even pain. And so the metabolic systems that allow you to perform in a physical manner and then to recover from that are typically going to be compromised. So I would expect there to be some limitation on your performance capacity as well as your recovery, but we should see those things change as we start to accumulate improvement going through the program, cleaning up your diet, cleaning up your gut, and dealing with whatever we have identified. But let's talk about this metabolic tipping point here, just because I want to make sure that you understand this concept, because this will be one of our guides to how much can you do and get away with. So when it comes to balancing out your ability to create physical output and your ability to recover from that, like going to the gym, on a hike, or whatever the case might be, and then feeling okay the next day, there is sometimes an incompatibility between your output and your ability to recover. And so what I'm trying to illustrate here is that there's got to be a balance between that. In fact, you can take the fittest athlete in the world and you can create an overtraining syndrome. All you have to do is give them more hard stuff to do and go past their metabolic tipping point. The problem is what we're dealing with likely in your scenario is that your metabolic tipping point is probably quite low. So let me illustrate it with a little bit of a graph here. So on the left-hand side, we have wellness, and as we go higher on this vertical axis, this would be higher wellness, this would be less wellness. And on the bottom, we have intensity. So as we go to the right, we have increasing levels of intensity. And we have this metabolic tipping point here right in the middle. But when we look at the relationship between intensity as a personal concept and the return in terms of creating wellness, very clearly that if you work out and your workouts are very, very easy for you, it doesn't matter what you're doing, if they're very, very easy, it's not going to translate into any kind of adaptation, or it's not going to promote a response in your body that's going to promote health and wellness. But as your intensity increases and we go to the right-hand side, all of a sudden we hit a point where we hit a minimum threshold of intensity that we start to get well. Of course, this is an adaptation over time. It doesn't happen in a single workout, but it's a habit that you have to keep pursuing. But as we continue to go up the intensity or further to the right on intensity, you'll see that wellness actually increases up to a certain point. So in an ideal world, we can divide your response to exercise intensity kind of roughly in half. And these are just approximations to illustrate a point. And as long as you stay underneath the intensity level that represents your tipping point, you're going to improve and you're going to get better. You're going to get more well. But if you exceed the metabolic tipping point, there comes a point where increasing intensity actually has a declining response. And not only do you not get wellness, you actually promote overtraining and poor recovery. And not respecting your metabolic tipping point actually can create all of the problems that you're trying to fix. Because once you overtrain and you can't recover, you promote more inflammation, you promote more free radical stressors, and that can affect mood and sleep. And again, these are typically things that we're dealing with most of our clients. So our best response is somewhere right in here. And you'll notice there's like no numerical values, no types of exercises here, because it's really independent of those things. You can take any exercise modality, whether it's running or elliptical machines or a rower or swimming, and you can apply this principle. You can do with weightlifting or anything else. But our best response is going to be where we work with an intensity level that is just shy of the metabolic tipping point. That's where we're going to maximize our return on wellness. But the problem, again, is if we exceed the metabolic tipping point, then we're on the downslope, and then we're creating problems. And then not only do we stop getting well, but we can be counterproductive. And I know for sure there are many clients that we work with who we actually have to ask them to stop exercising for a while until we can create some metabolic stability for them. And there is sometimes this misnomer or misunderstanding that if I just work harder, things are going to work better. And sometimes that's the absolute worst thing you can do. So we have this huge continuum. We have clients who come in with metabolic issues who have never worked out or haven't worked out for a while, and we have to get them to the point where they are exercising. We have people who are working out and they're just kind of holding their own. They can't push too hard because then they get a decline. We have people that have stopped on their own, or we have to ask them to stop because their exercise is exceeding their metabolic recovery capacity. But the interesting thing about this concept of the tipping point is that your tipping point can move. When you come in and you already are metabolically compromised, then your metabolic tipping point, you hit that very early. So instead of being able to exercise with a certain amount of intensity, like we see in this particular graphic. Like if this represented an individual person who wasn't metabolically incapacitated, maybe this is what we would consider metabolically normal, their metabolic tipping point occurs at a certain level of intensity. But for someone who is metabolically compromised, their capacity to recover is going to be greatly diminished. They have a low level of wellness, and so their metabolic tipping point occurs very, very early with a much lower intensity. And this is why some people end up giving up and not going to the gym, because no matter what they do, they hurt. No matter what they do, they're tired. No matter what they do, they feel worse afterwards. And if that's kind of ringing true for you, let's make sure that we talk about these things, because we don't want to use that as an excuse to not work out. We just need to make sure that we are putting step 1 in front of step 2, and we're controlling your metabolic state, and we're giving you the foundation and the capacity so that then we can change your tipping point and bring it further to the right, so you can exercise with enough intensity to start getting those triggered adaptive responses that translate over time into greater levels of fitness, greater capacity to engage in the sport of life. And that's really what we're after. So that tipping point moves, and it becomes very easy for people who have these metabolic compromises to overtrain and to not recover. So let's move on to the final core 4 here, and that's developing the habit. I'm not going to ask you necessarily to start working out yet. Again, we'll make these decisions in the individual consult session. So let's make sure that we talk about that. What I want to know from you is we want to know what your current conditioning level is, what your experience in your past is. You know, are you an ex-gym rat? Have you never set foot in a gym? Do you hate gyms? Do you enjoy working out by yourself? Do you like doing things outdoors? Are you okay with, running or biking or rowing? Or do we have to stick to certain things? No matter what your preferences are, we can find something that will be slightly challenging for you when the time is right. And I want to emphasize that, when the time is right. So what's your current conditioning level? What's your current habit? If you're not going to the gym or not doing anything from a physical activity standpoint, the very next step for you is going to be just start a very simple walking program. And all we want is 20 minutes, 4 days a week of something simple like walking. Now you can throw in some floor exercises, maybe some Pilates, maybe some simple yoga, maybe some very easy calisthenics like some light jumping jacks or something very simple. There's all kinds of video routines. There's a great website called fitnessblender.com that you might want to check out. Now that's for someone who already has a certain amount of capacity, but I want you to know that we're not going to ask you to go spend hundreds of dollars hiring a trainer. You don't necessarily need to do that. If you have some good trainers in your area and you have the finances and resources to do it, great. Otherwise, there's all kinds of free resources, and we'll actually be giving you a template and teaching you the fundamentals of what a good, sound, functional fitness program is going to be based on. There's an infinite variety of ways that you can put those programs together. We're just going to try to teach you the concepts and principles and give you a starting point, and then help you along the way in terms of developing your capacity. But going back to what I was saying before, if you're not currently exercising, what we need to do first before we worry about what you're doing is we need to start creating the habit. And that means 4 days a week, maybe every other day would be the easiest way to think about this. Every other day, take 20 minutes. Maybe it's during your lunch hour. Maybe it's right after dinner. Take your spouse or your loved one, your significant other, and just go out. And, don't make it a nice, easy stroll, but just, push the pace just a little bit. But again, I'm not concerned about content of that, what you're doing in that time frame. I'm more concerned about you getting used to doing this on a regular basis. And once we establish the habit and we create your metabolic foundation for you, then we can worry about doing the right things, or to say it better, to do things more efficiently, that you're getting the right return on things. So just in summary, and I know this is a pretty quick lesson in comparison to the others, but we have to break the fitness discussion up because there is so much that we do want to share. But in summary, fitness is a broad concept that implies capacity to do a lot of stuff that helps you in everyday life. And what you do in your physical programming should mimic the fundamental movement patterns that we see based on the human design. Things like squatting and lifting and bending and reaching and pulling and pushing. We need to understand where your metabolic tipping point is, and we need to respect that, but we also need to work on improving that. Okay, and that's part of our job in terms of guiding you through, but we need your feedback on that. And then the final thing is to take the next step. Wherever you are right now in your current habits and your current conditioning, there's always one more step that we can take that's going to make your program more efficient, or to start a program if you don't have one. So in our next session, we're going to go into more detail about this concept of what is fitness or what is functional fitness. We'll talk more about defining personal intensity. We're going to talk about things like theoretical maximum heart rate. What defines intense exercise? And we have very specific parameters that we want to follow to make sure that we're going along those rules. And we're going to talk about finding and improving that metabolic tipping point. And then we'll begin the discussion where we outline the Core 4 exercise program. Chances are this particular lesson is going to be broken up into 3 different sections. Again, this is going to be a big one, but it's an important one. I don't want you to ever forget that you should be active on a daily basis, but you should have a focused and intentional fitness program where you're devoting 3, preferably 4 days per week in a well-designed approach that's going to mimic daily life and improve your capacity to engage in the sport of life. So this is me reminding you that you are unique. Your doctor should be treating you that way. We'll talk to you soon.